Hello, wizards. How are you doing today? Today, I'm going to share with you something incredible, something that will help you make the right choices in the now moment so that you can experience the biggest shifts in your life. Experience the acceleration, experience the biggest leaps so that you can just move forward into your highest version. You see, it is a possibility. And I've created a tool which now I'm calling the resonance matrix, which will help you do that, right? So before I introduce you the tool, I'd just like to give you a little bit of introduction what this is all about. So if you have been following my channel, if you have attended my master classes, you know that I keep talking about this, the importance of paying attention to what resonates with you. You see, even if it does not make sense, because what resonates with you is a clear direction from your higher mind. It's like your higher mind tells you through your resonance where you need to go so that you can align with your highest timeline. You see, you have a life purpose timeline, which is your path of least resistance and most harmonious evolution. And when you follow your resonance, that what happens is you align with your life purpose timeline and you start acceleration on every level of your life. You see, in my last video, I shared with you some of the acceleration that I experienced. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you how you can experience that too, right? So the essence of the tool that I'm going to share with you in a while would be to understand how we can move towards what resonates with us, even if it does not make sense to your linear mind, because the higher mind knows things which the linear mind cannot fathom. And if you get too stuck into making everything understandable before moving towards your resonance, you will stay stuck and you will not experience acceleration. You see, so let's dive into the tool. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the diagram, which is super cool. So let's do it. So I hope you can see this diagram here, which shows a quadrant. You see, you have four boxes, which I'm calling the resonance matrix. You see, and I'm going to explain how this works. But before I do that, let's understand what is the purpose of a quadrant like this. As I mentioned, any acceleration, any, big leaps that you want to make in your life, if you're experiencing some stuckness present in your life, then what is needed is choices. The choices that we are making in this now moment either keeps us stuck, or it takes us towards the flow, or moves us towards magic. You see, I'm going to explain all of that, but it is the choices that we are making in the now moment which determines where we are going to go. We are like a vehicle, right? We are constantly making choices. Some choices takes us to the wrong lane. Some choices takes us to our fast track, and your life purpose timeline is your fast track, and your GPS is your inner guidance system, and your GPS speaks to you through your resonances. And that is what I'm going to share with you, how you can differentiate the guidance that you're constantly receiving so that you can move towards your fast track, your life purpose timeline. So this quadrant is going to help you make those choices. So how does this work? So as you can see, the entire quadrant is what I'm calling the resonance matrix. And it's divided into four parts. And on top, I have written make sense. On the left-hand side, I've written resonates. What do I mean by this? As you can see, there is this quadrant is also divided into does and doesn't, right? So how does this work? You see, we experience four type of choices in our now moment constantly, and we are making them. And these choices falls into four categories. And these choices takes us to different places. You see, as you can see, some takes us towards stuckness, some takes us towards flow, some takes us towards emotion, and some takes us towards this big jumps, which is our central area, which is where we want to be. So how does this work? As you can see, that let's begin with, let's say, the quadrant number 3. okay, where many of us find ourselves. So if you are looking at this video, probably you are experiencing some amount of stuckness in your life as well, you see, and this is going to help you to come out of the stuckness. So if you see that the quadrants are like this, the first quadrant is about what does not make sense but does resonate. The second quadrant is about what does make sense and does resonate. The third quadrant is what does make sense but does not resonate. And the fourth quadrant is what does not resonate and does not make sense either. So let's start with the third quadrant. Okay. So the third quadrant, as you can see, it's about the choices that you're experiencing in the now moment, which does make sense, but it does not resonate with you. You see, and this is where if we keep making those choices, we find ourselves stuck in loops. We find ourselves going through the same lessons again and again, and we find ourselves struggling a lot, making a lot of effort in our reality, but our reality does not shifting much. You see, and we get confused, like, what am I doing wrong? I'm doing all the right things, but I'm stuck. If you are experiencing stuckness in any area of your life, you are here. Let me explain how this works. For example, the choices now you're making, reflect on it. Where are you stuck in your life? See, are you making the choices which does make sense to you, but it does not resonate with you? And are you making those choices constantly? Because when we are in this quadrant, what happens is we are making the choices which make sense to our linear mind. Like we feel that, this is how it should be done. It makes sense. And if you do it, this happens. So many people have done it. It has worked for them. So it makes sense. X plus Y equals to Z. 1 plus 1 equals to 2 makes sense. But when you pay attention to your state of being, you notice that even if it does make sense, it does not resonate. You do it only because you're making sense. Okay. And many of us find ourselves stuck in this place. I have found myself stuck in this place multiple times. Even when I'm speaking this, there are many areas in my life where I am stuck in these places. I'm working on that. Right. But what's going on when we are here, what happens is we know it does not resonate with us, but because it makes so much sense, we deprioritize our inner guidance. And what we do is we ignore our inner guidance, which is saying, please don't go there because it does not resonate. Always remember, resonance is more important than what makes sense. I know it sounds crazy, but this is how it works in wizard consciousness, in fourth density consciousness. We understand that resonance comes from higher guidance. It knows things we cannot fathom, but the linear mind only can perceive what it sees in the driver's seat view, right? So resonance is like GPS. Linear mind is like your driver's seat view in the car. So it's always important, more important that we prioritize our resonance. So when we do not pay attention to what resonates and we ignore it just because of paying attention to the rationale and the logic of the linear mind, we stay stuck. We do not learn the lessons because the higher guidance is like, don't go there. And you're like, you know what? It makes sense. I would go there. And that is when everything happens. You see? So if there are areas of life in your life where you're experiencing stuckness, you will find yourself doing that. You see? It makes sense, but it does not resonate, but you're constantly moving there, thinking one day it will happen, one day it will change because it has to happen because it makes sense. Right? Right? So this is where you experience stuckness. Okay. Now let's move to the fourth quadrant. This fourth quadrant even is a worse one. Okay. This fourth quadrant is about the choices that we make in the present moment, which does not resonate and it does not make sense. Okay. Now you might be thinking, why on earth would anyone make any choice which does not make sense and which does not resonate? It's complete nonsense, isn't it? It's foolishness to go there. Why would in their right mind do that? They have to be mad to do that because if they don't enjoy it, it does not resonate with them and it does not make sense either. But when I reflected on this, I found myself in my life many times in these places. And many of us, if not all of us, have been there also. And many of us probably are there also in this point in their life. Why this happens? You see, why do we find ourselves in places constantly making choices which does not resonate and does not make sense either? Because of limiting beliefs. You see, if the third quadrant is your old patterns, because when you get stuck, you experience your old patterns, you just go loop and loop and loop. You see, the fourth quadrant is about limiting beliefs. So when you have limiting beliefs, you have a lot of fear-based beliefs. What happens is you stay stuck in a path of life because you feel that if you make a different choice, something bad will happen, something fearsome will happen, something will get destroyed, and you don't want to go there because you are afraid. And because you are afraid, you will stay in the lane which is not yours, which you know that if you keep walking in that road, you are not getting to a better place and you're not enjoying the journey as well, but you stay there because you're afraid of changing lanes. What happens when you stay here? You experience an inauthentic existence and you experience demotion. Demotion means it's the very opposite of ascension. You see, if ascension is about promotion, you are getting promoted to higher versions, you're experiencing higher level of happiness, joy, bliss, up leveling, all that stuff. When you are constantly making choices in the now moment, which does not resonate and does not make sense, you descend. You do not ascend, you descend. That means you demote. You get demoted. And that is when you find yourself, your life getting worse and worse and worse. You see, I found myself in such a phase for a good 1 year in a particular year of my life where I noticed myself losing a lot of my powers, my up leveling, and my life kept getting worse and worse and worse. It was like a spiraling downward. So this is what happens when you find yourself in this place. You will just experience emotion. You will find yourself living a life which leads to an inauthentic existence. So it makes sense, right? So if the third quadrant is about your old patterns, which keeps you stuck, the fourth quadrant is all about the descension, demotion, right? So now that we have understand the lower two quadrants, let's understand the higher quadrants. Okay, before we move to the best quadrant, the fantastic magical quadrant of this place, the violet area, let's understand the second quadrant. The second quadrant is all about what does make sense and what does resonate. You see, so when one find themselves learning the lessons when they are stuck, and finally they make the choices, start deciding to move towards what resonates with them and do not stay too much stuck up in what makes sense, they finally come out of this and slowly move towards this second quadrant. When you learn your lesson, you will move towards the second quadrant. The second quadrant is all about integrated wisdom. So the areas in your life which you have learned the lessons already, you made the changes, and now you are not falling back to the old patterns when similar situations present themselves. You're making the different choices. That is where this quadrant is at. This is about the flow. You see, where you make choices which does resonate and does make sense. Now, again, remember, it's not important what makes sense. It's important it resonates. But it is an easier quadrant to maneuver through and work at because you once made the big changes in your life and you notice the result, your life shifting. And now, because you have seen the results, and now you can look back at it, now it, because it makes sense to you, like, you know what, I made this change, I made a different choice, and now my life is not the same anymore. So it becomes easier because it makes sense to you, because you followed your resonance first. Making sense is not important. Following your resonance changes things which later make sense. You see, because if you just get stuck up on making sense, you will stay stuck in old patterns. So when it starts making sense because you already made the changes, what happens is you receive wisdom. And because you have received the wisdom, now making the same choices, which allows you to move towards your resonance, becomes easier because the mind is not in conflict. It's like, I understand. It makes sense. to follow your resonance in this area of my life because it has worked once. So let's move forward. So it allows you to stay in the flow. You see? So it allows you to move towards your journey in a more consistent way. So you'll find yourself when if you are making these choices, which makes sense and does resonate, that you are moving consistently forward in your life, that you find yourself embodying your higher version, and the lessons that you have learned already get more and more solidified. So this is the place of integrated wisdom. This is the place where many of us want to be because it's such an easy quadrant to maneuver through because it makes sense. So you are not in conflict and you keep, moving forward, right? But there is an even more wonderful, amazing, magical quadrant than this, which is the first quadrant. You see, this is the quadrant which I wanted to bring to you through this entire lesson, through this entire tool, so that you can start moving towards this. Because this is where wizard consciousness is. This is what wizard consciousness is all about. This is where all the magic happens. You see? So, what is this? What is this I'm talking about? So, as you can see, that this quadrant is about what does not make sense but does resonate. You see? And why I'm saying this is the most important quadrant, because when you make choices in the now moment which does not make sense but does resonate, that is when you're going to experience the biggest leaps. That is when you're going to experience the acceleration, the paradigm shifts, the transformations, the quantum leaps, the accelerated evolution. All of that stuff happens here. So you might be thinking like, didn't you say that this is the place where also good stuff happens? This is good stuff place, obviously. But this is not nearly as amazing, as magical as this one. Because here, this is the place where consistent forward movement happens, like a linear thing. You see, you have learned your lessons and you are moving forward. Here you are still walking, maybe running. This is the place where you fly. You see, if you want to experience, like I mentioned in my last video, where I experienced massive leaps and acceleration in certain areas of my life, this is where it happened. I followed the choices, I made those choices which really resonated with me, even if it did not make sense. This is where it's a little bit hard to maneuver also, because you are in a little bit of conflict because it does not make sense why I should do this instead of something that makes sense. But your resonance is asking you to go there, inner guidance is asking you to go there. But if you go there, what we'll experience is all of this good stuff. Why does this happen? It's because, again, as I mentioned, your higher guidance knows things that the linear mind can't fathom, right? So when you are following your resonance and you're surrendering to it and you're trusting it, it becomes easy to maneuver through it, this quadrant. And that is when your life becomes a magical explosion. You see? And it requires trust. And this requires trust. And this is where I want you to be. I want you to reflect what are some of the choices in this now moment that are present to you, or are presenting themselves to you, which does not make sense. You find yourself sometimes experiencing moments of strong resonance, inspiration, passion. Sometimes it makes you feel, for example, I should write this book, or I should travel to this place, or I should, do something else, create art maybe, or do something else maybe. And suddenly you start thinking, it doesn't make sense because I have financial challenges, I have so many limitations, I have so many other priorities. It does not connect, and you stop. When you don't follow your resonance because you want to make sense, what happens is you fall into these old patterns and you find yourself struggling in life, doing all the right things, and yet you find yourself not shifting your reality at all. Why does it happen? Because of this, you fall radically back to the old pattern, right? And then you have to learn your lessons, and then you have to move to quadrant one again, right? But if you want to change your life, and again, I'm saying that if you find yourself stuck, or if you find your life, in a crazy place where everything is like going in a downward spiral, then I want you to reflect what are those choices, what are those guidances that are coming to you that really resonates with you, but you are not going there because you feel that it does not make sense just because of that. And if you allow yourself to trust your inner guidance and go in this direction, make those choices that does not make sense but does resonate, you are going to transform your reality. You are going to shift your reality because that is how it works. That is how it works. This is where all the paradigm shift, all the massive transformations work. So when we work on anything in wizard consciousness, our majority focus is in the first quadrant. Because if you want to experience magic in your life, if you want to learn the lessons in the quickest possible way, you have to experience these jump moments, because this is the quadrant of higher guidance. When you follow your higher guidance, you will not just be in the flow, you will jump. Always making a choice in this quadrant will feel like a jump, as if like you're jumping out of an airplane. Skydiving, you don't know what's going to happen. It's uncertainty, it's vulnerability. And that is when you are flying. That is when you are experiencing the best of life. That is when the massive evolutions happen. But you have to jump. So the jump moments happens here, and here all the magic happens. So again, find yourself, think and reflect on these four quadrants. What are the choices that are presenting themselves to you in your life, and where they fall in these four quadrants? If you're experiencing stuckness, you'll find most of your choices here. If you're experiencing a lot of negativity, you'll find your choices here. You're making choices here in the fourth quadrant. If you're experiencing flow in your life in certain areas, you're making choices in this quadrant. And if you are experiencing a lot of magic in your life, you'll find yourself making choices in this quadrant. And if you want to experience magic in your life, start making choices in the first quadrant. That means, very simply, again, follow your resonance, even if it does not make sense, right? So now that I've shared with you this wonderful tool, the resonance matrix, again, ask me questions. If something is not clear, leave it in the comment section. And again, my homework to you, my guidance to you will be just this. This is the conclusion. Follow what resonates with you, even if it does not make sense. It requires vulnerability. That means it requires trust. And when you develop trust in your inner guidance, you will become the wizard of your life. You will experience all the magic in your life. This is very easy. It's not complicated. This tool is just a reflection, is just a permission slip so that you can start making those choices. It's just a permission slip. That's it. That's it. I hope this tool has resonated with you and you're going to make use of it. And I have something really exciting that I want to share with you, that if you want to directly work with me, if you want to learn the tools of wizard consciousness, the concepts of wizard consciousness, you want to experience the magic that wizard consciousness can give to you by connecting with your inner guidance, I have a program. I have a 4-week program which is all about learning to tune in with your inner guidance system. You have an inner GPS, you have an inner guidance system, which is constantly working 24/7 so that you can make the right choices, so that you can stay in quadrant one, so that you can start lining up with your life purpose timeline. You have a path of least resistance. You have a life purpose timeline, which I call your private highway. And when you connect with your inner GPS, your inner guidance system, you can start making the right choices, which will help you come in alignment with your life purpose timeline. And that is what I'm going to share with you in my 4-week program. I'm going to teach you how to connect with your inner guidance system so that you yourself can align with your life purpose timeline. You see, it will be amazing. If you want to learn about the program, just send me an inquiry. My email ID will be in the description of this video. Send me an inquiry and I'll tell you how to join the program and work with me directly. Okay. And I am going to be hosting a free masterclass mostly this Saturday, where I'm going to be teaching you the essence of wizard consciousness and the inner guidance system. If you want to attend the masterclass, it's completely free. It'll be on Zoom. Sign up. The link will be in the description. Going to happen on this Saturday. Find out the exact date and time for the masterclass in the sign up page. And if you have enjoyed this video, I have another video which I just uploaded where I shared with you some of the biggest leaps, acceleration paradigm shifting transformation I experienced in my own life. So you might watch that video. It will appear on your screen here mostly. Watch it, and I'll see you again soon. Have fun.